We've made it to chapter 3 of our Four Agreements book study. If you missed the first two, I'll put a link to the playlist with all the rest of them. And if you don't want to miss out on future ones, click subscribe. Okay, let's dive right into this chapter. I'm going to have to tell you, this one right here is my favorite agreement. Why is this my favorite agreement? This is my favorite agreement because I personally have experienced the most personal growth and spiritual growth with this one agreement. He even talks about in this chapter how if you apply the first agreement and the second agreement, that you'll pretty much take care of about 75% of what's going on in your life. So what we're going to do is I'm going to cover the major takeaways in this chapter and then how to apply it to your life. Now, before we dig too deep in, I do want to say this is not easy work. It's hard. It's not easy to take a look at us taking everything personally. It's even harder to start to change what we're doing around it. It has taken me decades to get this to a point where it's manageable, functionable, and easy to implement and monitor. So don't expect instant results. It's just not something you're going to get with instant results. It's going to take work. And so really with any spiritual growth practice, keep in mind that the work is where the growth happens, and the work isn't always easy. I think our society really tries to convince us it's easy. Do a week of meditation, you'll be great. Read the book, you'll be fine. When in reality, actually applying those over a long term so that they can transform your life isn't a 1 week thing. It isn't a read it and you're done. It's daily application. Okay, so with my tiny lecture out of the way, let's dive into the very first takeaway on this chapter, and that is all about personal importance. And I think it's really important to understand that the reason we take things personally is because we think everything's about us. We are looking at the world from a very selfish standpoint. Now, I hear you saying this, but I do everything for everybody else. I don't take care of myself. It isn't about me, it's about them. Well, guess what? As a recovering people pleaser, I can tell you your people pleasing is about you and not about them. And so before you can actually dive into doing this work in this chapter, you have to understand this. You have to understand that unless you've done the work, you are approaching it from a selfish standpoint. Now, I am sure you can give me an example of somebody that was born that way. That was their path. But most of us have to understand that even when we are over giving, that it is because we are selfishly meeting our needs. We don't even recognize that our needs are being met through overgiving. So really try and wrap your mind around that one. And once you do, it will make the rest of the book easier. Okay, so the second takeaway is probably the most beneficial, besides for the first one, in actually changing how you take things personal. And that is that taking things personal is actually two-sided. So the one side is taking things personal when somebody says something to you. You tell me you hate my outfit, I believe it, I run home, cry, I change my outfit. That's taking something personal. The other side of taking something personal is what you are doing to somebody else. And this can be as simple as opposing your opinions on somebody else. We've got a major issue in our society right now on forcing our opinions on other people, and that is taking things personally. It's, I am right, you are wrong, here, take my ideas. So understanding these two sides of this don't take things personal will really help you identify where you can actually change your behavior to help some of these outcomes. So a perfect way to summarize this one, and we're actually going to get into some examples on this because this is a really big concept, but to summarize it is just as what somebody says about you has to do with all of their agreements, what you say and what you do has to do with all of your agreements. And understanding that these two components are what make up don't take things personally, that will help you face all the really tough issues. Okay, so what we want to do now before I get into the rest of the takeaways is I want to go through some examples because I think looking at examples helps you understand it better, and it will also help you understand how nuanced this can be. Okay, so the first example I want to share is a really easy to understand example, and I want to start with that so you can see how this would actually show up. So you and I are having a conversation about our favorite colors. Most of us, for the most part, are not going to get into a disagreement when we don't agree. If I like blue and you like red, we probably won't get into an argument trying to convince the other one that we are right. Why is that? Because neither one of us are taking it personal. If I say my favorite color is blue, you go, okay, cool. And you say my favorite color is red, I go, okay, cool. It's not something that in society we really force our opinions on each other. Now, if we did get into an argument about which one was better, that would be taking it personal. If I say my favorite color is blue, you go, my favorite color is red, and I go, well, you're wrong. Blue's better because it has these tones and it makes your face do this, and you go, no, red is better because it's the power color. And if that's what happens in our discussion, then we are both taking it personal. So I hope that one really helped you. Now we are going to dive into a much, much harder example. Okay, so on the hard example, we are going to use the example of a relationship that it's time for the relationship to be done. So you're in a relationship with somebody, whether it's friend, romantic, doesn't matter. There's a relationship, and it is time for you to leave that relationship. But you don't, because you are worried about what other people will think and say. Not the other person that's in the relationship, but people around the relationship. This is you taking their reaction to your decision personally. But in reality, how they react to your decisions and what you need in life has nothing to do with you. It has to do with their agreements. So let's say you leave a romantic partnership. And one of the concerns, or you're trying to leave a romantic partnership, and one of the concerns is my parents will be disappointed in me. It's another loss. They're going to think that I'm broken. So you don't leave it. Instead, you stay in misery in a relationship you know you shouldn't be in. Well, you are assuming they're thinking that you're a failure. You're assuming that they're thinking that you can't have a relationship. You don't know that's how you're going to take it. Maybe they're thinking that you need to leave the relationship, but they don't want to say anything because they don't want to hurt your feelings. So by not taking actions on what you know is right for you, because it's something that somebody else is going to do, is taking it completely personal. And let's say that they do react that way. Let's say that they do think that you're a failure. You need to understand that they think that because of their agreements, not because of reality, but because of their agreements. Maybe they were told they're bad at relationships because they had one too many. Maybe they think that their friends are going to think that you're bad at relationships. Maybe they think that this was the one, and maybe they think they're amazing and they don't see the real side of the person. You don't know why they're thinking what they're thinking because it's their agreements, their life, their mind. So when you stay in a relationship because of what you think is going to happen to other people, you are putting yourself in a place of personal importance because what you do, think, and feel is going to impact everybody, which is being selfish in your life. Now I'm going to add one more layer to this so that you can understand why it can be so hard to move forward with this particular agreement. Let's say, in addition to this, you have an agreement around abandonment. So not only are you not leaving the relationship because you're worried about what your parents are going to say, you are not leaving it because you have an agreement that is written around you're going to be abandoned if you're not perfect. And so you stay because you're afraid that if you leave this one relationship, that your entire support system is going to abandon you. Mom and dad are going to abandon you. Your friends are going to abandon you because they think you are wrong. And so when you intertwine all of these dynamics, it becomes very complicated to make a decision. Let's throw one more layer on. Let's say mom and dad are telling you that you need to stay in that relationship. Let's say they are actually verbally saying to you, you need to stay. You need to make this work. You need. Well, it's you accepting their opinion is taking it personal. So that's why this chapter is so hard to actually apply in real life, because when you're unpacking a situation, there's multiple levels of this taking it personal. Okay, let's get into the rest of the takeaways from the chapter, and then we'll get into how to implement it in your life. Okay, the third takeaway, I'm actually going to start with a quote, and this is from page 51, and it is not what I am saying that is hurting you. It is that you have wounds that I touch by what I have said. I'm going to read that for you again. It is not what I am saying that is hurting you. It is that you have wounds that I touch by what we have said. Okay, we actually touched on this in the chapter 2. If you want to go back and check that out, in that our minds are only fertile grounds for negative thoughts when we have wounds that can be triggered. Our mind has to be ready and willing and able to take a negative thought in order for it actually to take a hold. So, as an example, if you believe that you have the most amazing singing voice and there's zero wounds around that, you authentically believe that, and I say to you, I can't stand your singing voice, you're going to be like, okay, that's great. And you're going to go on with your day. If you don't fully believe that you actually have an amazing singing voice, and I say, your singing voice is horrible, you're going to go, oh my God, okay, so I need to hire a coach. I need to quit singing. I need to do this. I need to do that. He even talks about in the book, I don't remember what chapter, about a mom having a bad day, yelling at her daughter for singing, and this daughter never singing again. Well, this can happen at any point in our lives, as long as there is a wound, as long as there is space in our mind to absorb that negative belief, we will take it on. We will take it personally. That is what taking it personally is. I hate the sound of your voice. Oh my God, I gotta change my life. When in reality, it's about them. Maybe the person who is saying you have a horrible voice prefers alto and you're a soprano. That's their agreement. That's their opinion. It has nothing to do with your reality. So the great part about this is, as you're doing this work and as you uncover emotional wounds and you heal them, your mind doesn't become fertile space for those negative seeds. The more you heal, the more you love yourself, the more that people can say to you and you go, all right, great, have a nice day. And so understanding this and really working through healing all that stuff will make it so much easier for you to not take things personally. Okay, the fourth takeaway is, even your opinions are not necessarily true. Now, I think this is really important to understand for multiple reasons. I'm going to go through the two that he talks about and then really summarize it with the third one. The first one is that we are taking in information from other realms. We are spiritual beings. And so as we go throughout our day and we are accessing our intuition and connecting to our higher selves, we are getting information that way. And that's why what we're thinking might not always necessarily be true of what we're thinking of ourselves. So maybe we think we are a bad singer, but we keep getting messages that we are, and that means we need to work on that. The second way is that our mind is not necessarily us. And so we can have these conflicting thoughts at the same time. I think the perfect way to explain this is through meditation. So many times in meditation, when you can get yourself to that centered, calm space, there'll still be this little mind, this little voice over here talking to you. There's still something that's going, hey, did you do that assignment? Hey, do you remember that thing that guy said? Hey. And so you're calm, and then there's this voice going, hey. And that is the disconnect where what you're saying might not be true. So you are here centered, whole, happy, contented, and your agreements and everything else are up here going, hey, can you hurry along? We got stuff to do. And so a lot of the third one that kind of brings these two together and some other things together that we talked about in the example is that we have conflicting agreements. We may have an agreement that is on one end of a subject and a totally different one on the opposite end of the subject. For me, this is money. My money agreements are on polar sides. In working through all of my agreements that have anything to do with money, it's always been a very weird process for me because I have these agreements that are so polar opposite of each other that I really have to tune into this lesson of my opinions of myself aren't always true. And I have to figure out which of those are true and which aren't. And then as I'm doing that, I'm getting bits of information from my spirit guides to point me in the right direction and process things like that. All right, so the fifth takeaway for this chapter is that our agreements create our reality. So if you don't like or if you're new to the word agreements or you don't like the word agreements, the same thing is limiting beliefs, core beliefs. It's any beliefs that we have within our system that dictate our future. So our agreements actually create our reality. So when somebody says what you think is what you get, this agreement belief system is what they're talking about. And when we take these agreements and we pair them with the human condition of suffering, this is when we really take things personal and we look for ways that our agreements will be true. So in our example of the relationship, if we have the fear of abandonment and we do get up the nerve to actually leave the person, and the fear is that we're going to be abandoned by our loved ones, chances are that's going to happen by one or two. Why? Because that's the agreement that we have with ourselves. It isn't until we do the work on clearing the agreement around abandonment that energy is no longer attracted to us. And he talks about we will find people who are ready and willing and able to help those agreements come to fruition. So if abandonment is your fear, you leave the relationship, family members leave you, you go into a new relationship without correcting the fear of abandonment, chances are very strong that relationship will also end in abandonment. And so really, truly, again, getting a hold of our agreements and healing them helps us create this thriving life. Okay, so that was a lot of takeaways. There's a lot to unpack in this book. And so I'm going to give you some ways that you can implement it, but I will say, if you're struggling with something in life, come back to this book or this chapter and really dig into what parts of what's going on in your life are you taking personally. Okay, so the first thing that you can do, and you're probably going to go, well, yeah, because one, he says it, and two, I've said it multiple times, know your agreements. The more you know your agreements, the easier it is to face them and uncover this stuff. We talked about in the first chapter, create your own little book of law, which is your book of agreements. So as you have the thought, write it down in your book, and then you will know exactly what it is. The second thing you can do is, as you identify the agreements, is begin to heal those emotional wounds. Really start to unpack how that agreement came to be, what it really means, what you needed in that moment, how you may have it now. Do the emotional healing work. It is absolutely critical in applying this book to your life. Now, the next tip is, as you are in the moment or as you're dealing with a specific issue, stop and take the time and ask yourself what parts of it you're taking personally. Grab your journal and a pen and sit down and really deconstruct the situation to understand what you're taking personally that they're saying and what you are putting on them that might be taking it personal. Look at it from both sides to understand all the dynamics. Now, with that, the final tip is, remember that you control only you. You are not responsible for anybody else. You don't control anybody else's emotions. You can't make things better for them. And by not remembering this, you are taking things personal. Okay, so how do you solve this final issue and actually implement it? Is ask yourself the question, am I in control of this? If your answer is no, I don't have control over this, then you're taking it personally. You need to move on or figure out how to change your reaction. But the simple question of, am I in control of this, will help you figure out what's yours and what is theirs. I actually want to end with another quote. It's on page 61, and it is, then you can be in the middle of hell and still experience inner peace and happiness. I'm going to read it one more time. Then you can be in the middle of hell and still experience inner peace and happiness. I wanted to share this quote with you because I want to confirm that this is absolutely 100% true. I can say, after digging in and doing this work, that now when stuff comes at me and things are going crazy, I just kind of go, oh, okay, well, let's keep rolling. I do have to stop and go, okay, wait a second, am I taking this personally? But it is much easier to handle the ups and downs of life. So if you liked this video, give it a like. If you want more content like this, hit subscribe, and I will see you next week with chapter 4.